everyone, and thank you for viewing my presentation of Language Matters. My name is Mercedes O'Brien Gruzeski. I am from St. Louis, Missouri. I currently live in Denver, Colorado. I am celebrating 10 years of service, serving families and children in the child welfare system. And I have 4 years with Raise the Future as a Youth Connections advocate. As I sit before you all today, I share with you that I am a birth parent, and I share that I have firsthand experience of what it feels like to advocate for yourself and your child against the child welfare system. This experience set me on a path to helping families and youth that are voiceless and lost in the foster care system. And I share this with you all because my experience as a birth parent has set me on a path to helping families and youth reunite. And now this path has led me to sitting in front of you all today. And I'm excited to share my experiences and project with you all. Let's begin. So first, we must begin with some context. Youth Connections advocates, who I will refer to as YCAs throughout this presentation, follow the Wendy's Wonderful Kids child-focused recruitment model. This model is evidence-based. And this model is overseen by the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. And a rigorous 5-year national evaluation revealed that children who are referred to in this program are 3 times more likely to be adopted. This is our WWK model. I'm going to run through this so that you all have an idea of what our YCAs are doing to serve our youth. We'll start here with the diligent search. And this is where YCAs cold call anyone that has been in the youth's life to learn more about the youth and, if appropriate, reconnect them to the youth. The Recruitment Plan is a document that the YCAs use to store all the connections that they have identified, located, and contacted. Here is the assessment of adoption readiness, and this is the document that the YCA fills out every 90 days to assess the youth's readiness for adoption. It is also a place where the YCA can store all of the youth's historical information. Here is where the YCA builds a relationship with the youth. They visit with the youth once a month to establish a trusting relationship and to develop a connection. Adoption preparation is where the YCA has intentional conversations with the youth around permanency and what this looks like for them. Here is the case record review, and this is where the YCA will take a deep dive into the youth's case record review to gather as much information and as many contacts as possible. And lastly, this is network building. And this is where the YCA will maintain the people who are already established in the youth network as a person who is a part of the youth network. And any person that they find, they will also ensure that they remain a part of that network. So now that we have some context under our belts, we can get into the issue, which is that YCAs are not able to provide effective services to our families who speak Spanish due to the following reasons: because of the language barrier and the lack of connection and development of an authentic relationship. So this means that YCAs cannot work the model to fidelity, and this leads to decreasing the chances that our Hispanic youth will be 3 times more likely to achieve legal permanency. So this is urgent, and it does impact our youth. So for example, I am currently serving a youth that is Hispanic and whose father who lives in Mexico. He was not the reason the youth came into care, but he can only speak Spanish. And because no one on this youth's team can speak Spanish, and we have not had the ability to figure out an interpreter, it is unlikely this youth will reunify or connect with him while he's still in the custody of Human Services. Thus, bringing us to my PICO. If a cultural or language policy, including guidelines on how to engage with Spanish-speaking families, is developed, and a set of resources is vetted, created, and shared with the YCA program, a core of individuals that are trained to support Spanish-speaking families is made available to staff. Would this lead to better services to our Spanish-speaking families and youth, with the likelihood of increased kinship adoptions? So here is my project methodology to addressing my PICO. We will discuss briefly the research and the data that I found, the process of approval for my project, and the development and implementation of my project. So in my research, I came across a study that included 242 Spanish-speaking clients that reported having an interpreter increased the client satisfaction 4 times fold. This study also found that a social worker who is fluent in the language of the client is the preferred method. Using the client's preferred language reduces errors, increases their satisfaction, and improves the use of resources. When using interpreters, they should be trained in confidentiality, agency-specific terms, concepts, programs, and activities. Additionally, when using an interpreter, this facilitates the client's access to care, reduces discrimination based on language barriers, increases the client's understanding of the services offered, decreases risks for misunderstandings in their recommendations, allows the client to participate in making decisions regarding their care, and allows the client to give informed consent for services they are being provided. Next, we wanted to know how the YCAs have been serving this population. So we asked them to take a survey. Here are some of those results. 64% have worked with youth who identify as Hispanic/Latino. 50% have worked with youth who are bilingual. 17% have worked with kinship families who speak only Spanish. 28% reported they were unable to connect with the youth's connection who only spoke Spanish. And on average, 10 YCAs were unable to serve 2 to 3 families. Additionally, 93% indicated that they would need assistance when diligent searching, and specifically, 57% indicated that they have asked or would ask our bilingual staff for assistance. And 36% said that they have or would use non-agency resources. So these percentages tell us that YCAs are already informally engaging our current Spanish-speaking staff as a resource to manage this language barrier. So next, we had the opportunity to interview our bilingual and monolingual Spanish-speaking families, who revealed to us that they prefer to speak their native language, as this would allow them to make more meaningful connections with their YCAs. And in addition, in speaking with my Spanish-speaking colleagues, I learned the concept of our emotional language. So for example, when our bilingual speakers are in times of distress, they often feel most comfortable when they can express, process, and connect in their native language. So for my intervention, I developed a Spanish-speaking resource group. SSRG is a resource group that consists of staff that speak Spanish and work for Raise the Future. These staff have offered a few hours of their work time to help YCAs cold call families who speak Spanish. I came up with this idea because I knew that this was something that a few of my colleagues were already doing to manage this barrier, and they confirmed this through their surveys. With these points in mind, I figured that this was something that we should expand upon because it was an immediate solution for our YCAs. Staff who are part of this resource group are called madrinas, and we will talk more about this on the next slide in a few moments. I also developed a policy proposal and consulted with our MPLD super coach and policy guru, Addie Williams. This policy is designed to help YCAs in the organization serve the Spanish-speaking population more effectively. As promised, it's time to introduce our madrinas. A madrina means a godparent in the Hispanic/Latino culture. And I came up with this idea through consulting with my Spanish-speaking colleagues. They shared with me that this represents a person that is a part of the youth village that helps to raise them. They are another person that is a part of the family. And godparent is also a term that is used in our Black communities, and it also means someone that helps to raise the child. So we liked this term because it resonates with the families that the YCAs are reaching out to. And since a part of the YCA's role is to build the youth village with the help of our madrinas, we felt that this name was a perfect fit. At this time, anyone who works for Raise the Future and can show that they have competent skills in writing, reading, and speaking Spanish is able to be a madrina. So before we continue on, I wanted to bring us back to the WWK model because I want to highlight these two specific components. So to reiterate, diligent search is when our YCAs are cold calling families, and networking is when our YCAs must establish a relationship with all of the people that are part of the youth network. And so these two are important because this is the focus of the YCAs and our madrinas when they are working together. Moving right along. So getting SSRG approved took us a few steps. First, I developed a written proposal. The proposal shared the urgent issues the YCAs are facing, the data supporting this, the purpose of the group, and how the group can help alleviate this disparity. In addition, myself and a few staff developed a video to introduce this resource group to the organization. A link will be provided in the video. Please feel free to watch when you have some time. So after our video was completed, the proposal and the video were sent to all senior leadership to review, provide feedback, and ultimately approve the resource group. Once I received the proposal back, it contained comments, questions, concerns, and corrections. After these were addressed, the proposal was sent to the Human Resources Department. After HR looked over the proposal and the video, they reported that before they could approve the resource group, they had to figure out whether or not the Department of Labor laws around volunteers wouldn't pose as a barrier. So specifically, DOL says that you can't let staff volunteer to do work that is substantially similar to their own jobs. The law exists so that companies cannot effectively ask people to volunteer to do unpaid overtime. But with more conversations, HR came to understand that those who would be madrinas would not volunteer to do extra work, but would rather find time within their regular work hours to help YCAs manage this barrier. So with that understanding, HR approved this resource. And in fact, one of the motivators behind this project is that the 1 or 2 Spanish-speaking staff we had in the agency were already doing this work informally. So after we got the green light, we had to get our madrinas up and running. To do this, I created forms on Office 365. I created a request for support, a closing of support, and YCAs and madrina feedback forms. I developed a procedure for when YCAs need support from this resource group. So this will look like once our YCA has identified that the youth and their family are Hispanic or Latino, the YCA then must submit a request for support form for help when diligent searching. And so then I created an onboarding process to ensure our madrinas were linguistically competent, as some staff may speak Spanish, but they may not be fluent. And we learned about the WWK model and went over their confidentiality forms. So I put together a training about the WWK model so that our madrinas would have an understanding and could provide a general overview to our families about the model when they are speaking to them. So then we onboarded our first 3 women to SSRG to become our madrinas. The madrinas tested each other on their linguistic and written competency skills to ensure that they were able to meet all of the YCA's requests. 2 of the madrinas attended the WWK training. The other staff member did not, as she was a manager for the YCAs at the time. When you are hired at Raise the Future, staff are required to sign a confidentiality form. We reiterated this contract to the madrinas and went over the importance of protecting our families' information. So once we got our madrinas onboarded, we launched SSRG. In our early samplings, SSRG received 7 requests from YCAs for help from madrinas. These requests included support for social media outreach, text, email, letters, and phone calls. This graph was put together with the data given to us through the YCA's request for support forms. The length of time the youth have been in care and how many of them need this resource stood out to me. This stood out to me because this shows that these services are needed for these youth who have been waiting in foster care for a long time already. And I can't help but to be reminded of that youth that I shared with you all at the beginning. If he had had a YCA that spoke Spanish, how much of a difference would that have made in his case? And could that have led to reunification with his father? Our madrinas reported that they helped our YCAs by making initial calls for a new and identified or located potential connection, provided interpretation services for a follow-up call, and one madrina made an initial and a follow-up call. And in addition, our madrinas reported that their time was used efficiently and this work filled their buckets. We had a few ways of evaluating SSRG and the progress our madrinas and YCAs were making together. As mentioned before, 2 madrinas completed a WWK training. Along with that, they had to take a pre and post test to assess how much knowledge they had gained and that they felt comfortable discussing the overview of the model. In an effort to collect data and feedback, YCAs and madrinas both completed feedback forms after each diligent search attempt. Based on the feedback, each agreed this resource was helpful and necessary. I'm grateful that we only faced a few during our pilot of SSRG. We learned that YCAs in Colorado would need a release of information from our caseworkers to approve someone else helping our YCAs cold calling families. We also had to meet with a few supervisors in Colorado to discuss how much madrinas should know about the use case when they are working alongside the YCA. So for example, the madrinas and the YCAs cannot control how much someone will discuss about their history with the youth. However, the YCA needs to maintain the youth and the family's confidentiality as much as possible. Madrina should only need to know information. And so we learned a few lessons as well. We identified a few gaps about a week after launching, and for example, the release of information. We learned that the youth's custodial agency needs to be informed of this resource due to the madrina's learning about the youth's historical information. And based on the feedback our YCAs provided, YCAs need more support when they are diligent searching. They may also need this at the monitoring stage. And the monitoring stage is when a youth is in their permanent home and heading toward legal permanency. So the impact my project had on my organization was not something that I had projected. Raise the Future is now hiring for multiple bilingual positions. They are looking to provide a bilingual premium to our Spanish-speaking staff. And other programs within the organization have requested the use of this resource group. So far, we are still assessing if this could work in our other programs. And MPLD's impact on my life has been just as profound. MPLD has provided me with a platform to share my story and my experiences with you all. I had the amazing opportunity to learn how to serve an underserved population and successfully alleviate an issue that's been on my heart for years. I gained beautiful relationships out of the experience, from collaborating with the best mentors and professionals across the nation, to learning and working alongside my Spanish-speaking colleagues. In the bond that is forged between the fellows and the alumni, it feels as if I have gained a family. When I started this journey, I was set to solve what almost felt like a simple problem. But what I learned along the way was there was much more to be learned about this issue. I learned a deeper understanding of the importance of cultural competency and the connection through language. Without connecting with our families in a way that speaks to them, and in our case, literally, we cannot achieve the outcomes that we would like. And I'm always thinking back to the youth that I shared with you all because honestly, I am thinking back to my birth daughter. There was no barrier that I would not have tackled to get her to the family that was best for her. And I cannot imagine how I would have fared against the system if language was against me too. I carry this use case because I was a part of that barrier that kept my youth from his dad. Lastly, it was a big moment for me when I learned about our emotional language. People need to be able to express themselves freely under distress. And as a YCA, I am calling with distressful information, and I want to make sure I can be as supportive as possible to them. All of this is what taught me why language truly matters. These are my references, and we have come to the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you all for viewing my action research project today.